to the latest episode of the Show Report. I'm Amit Gafir here with Ben Strober, Maryland alum, producer of 1067, and the host of the Locked On Wizards podcast. We're here reviewing the Week 2 win over Maryland, Friday night kickoff, lone Friday night game for Maryland this year as they walked away with a 20-9 win over Northern Illinois. Wasn't always pretty, but seemed like they were able to do exactly what they needed to do in the end. Came up with a clutch play in the on fourth down there to pull away there, but did just enough to move to 2-0. Ben, what was your main takeaway from the Week 2 win?
Main takeaway is a win, Ahmed. That's the best way you can put it. It's not always going to be easy. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit ugly, but these are games that you have to win when you're a program that's super young, the way Maryland is. You're trying to figure out your footing as you get through the non-conference slate before Big Ten play. You just had to find a way to make sure you came away with a win in that game, and Maryland ultimately was able to do so on the back of its freshman quarterback in Malik Washington. There's some really positive things I was able to take away from this, even though it was a little bit closer than maybe people would have liked it to be, maybe people thought it would be based on the line before the game. I kind of always figured this would be a little bit closer. Northern Illinois is just that kind of program. They're pesky, they run the ball really well, and they make it difficult to really establish any kind of dominance in terms of possession just because they're able to milk over 8.5 minutes in one drive the way they did at the end of the first half. But only 3 penalties for 30 yards for Maryland. I mean, talk about a major improvement right there. All of the noise and questions surrounding Mike Locksley and his program after committing all those penalties in Week 1. They really kind of put some of those noises to bed, I think, last week. And it's not always going to be like that. It's going to be much more difficult to sustain that level of clean football, especially in the Big Ten. But like to see that they did get better from that sense. So if there's one thing you want to take away is they got better last week in the win against Northern Illinois. One of the things that did concern me with the team, though, is I feel like they were pushed around a little bit at the line of scrimmage. I would have liked them to see them control the game a little bit more from the line, but ultimately they were unable to do so. That running back for Northern Illinois, he was small, but he was pesky. He was tough. That offensive line got a decent push, and ultimately that's what allowed Northern Illinois to stay in the game for as long as they did. So if you look at it from that perspective, maybe a little bit concerning because you know you're going to face some really tough offensive lines, including Wisconsin. A week from now, they always have a good offensive line, it seems like, and I expect that to be exactly the same when Maryland will travel to Madison for that. So if you look at it from that, maybe there are going to be some issues there. Maybe the defensive line is going to struggle to play the run a little bit. But ultimately, had some key guys that came up clutch. Like I said, Washington, who delivered the big pass to Shalik Knotts on fourth down to kind of put the game on ice. Always a good thing to see. And a guy like Knotts, who I've been high on this year, and he's been with this program now for a few years, maybe starting to finally break out. It's good to see players like that who've been with the program for a while starting to make a real impact.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Shalik Knotts in year 4 now. He talked about it earlier this week with local media, but just really sitting behind other guys like Jashawn Jones, Ty Felton, Caden Breather, Rakeem Jarrett. The multiple, the long line of wide receivers that have been in that room, and I think that going into this season, all eyes were kind of on that wide receiver 3 role. Octavian Smith, Jaleel Farouk, both those guys really cemented, and who was going to really take control of that wide receiver 3 spot. And through 2 weeks, it really seems like Shalik Knotts, he's second on the team in receiving yards, or leads the team in receiving yards, second on the team in catches, third in targets. So he's been a big piece in the passing attack. I think that does answer a big question for Maryland, something that they could have answered in non-conference play, filling that wide receiver 3 void. But I'd say for me, Week 2, really on both sides of the ball was about stopping the run. You mentioned it, NIU, their identity on offense is running the ball, and I thought, you take away the 75-yard run by NIU there. Obviously, a big play that made the game one possession game once again, but Maryland was able to limit NIU to just 2 runs over 10 yards. No other carries were over 20 yards there. So there was some to like there. But I would say that the biggest takeaway is really on offense. It really did feel pretty clear that Maryland was going into the game with an intent to figure out a way to, find the success on the ground, establish the run. And it felt like, early in the second quarter, Maryland got the ball near midfield, ran 5 straight run plays, started off with an Octavian Smith end around, and then I believe Nolan Ray took the next three carries or 4 carries there. Really setting up the play action pass from Malik Washington to find Dorian Fleming in the end zone for a 15-yard touchdown. So I think that was the most successful drive, and I think that was maybe a glimpse of what can be for Maryland in this offense with, like we've mentioned, just having a young, inexperienced quarterback, an offense that's still trying to find its footing, get its identity together. Those are the kinds of drives that I think can kind of build momentum and grow confidence really going into Big Ten play. But Maryland really hasn't been able to find that consistency, the big plays
Hmm.
on the ground. Just 2 carries on the ground so far, over 10 yards. So I would say that obviously Pep Hamilton, that's been his bread and butter. Through fall camp and whatnot. It's always been very clear that figuring out a way to run the ball, create that balance on offense is the main priority. But I would say that through 2 weeks, I'm just not too sure that we see it just yet.
Yeah, and to kind of allude exactly to what you're talking about right here, they need to be better on first and second down because their
Yeah,
third down percentage right now is just barely over 30%. They were 3 of 12 on third down last week in the Friday night contest, so that's just simply not good enough. But the reason for that is they're finding themselves in third and long situations just quite too often. And I think what you exactly said, Pep Hamilton and the offense, they got to find a way to establish the run game a lot better. They need to find a way to get better chunk plays. Maybe you get yourself, 4 to 5 yards on first down and set yourself up to be in third and manageable. If you're on third and 8 or longer, almost every single drive, you're obviously going to convert a lot lower percentage of those because it's a very obvious passing situation for Maryland. It makes it a lot more difficult on an offense, especially with an inexperienced quarterback. So I think, maybe Towson will be an opportunity for them to do so because they need to be better on third down overall, but that's going to happen by being better on the first 2 downs.
yeah, absolutely. Maryland on Friday night, just 1 of 8 on third downs, over 5 yards or more to go, and finished the night converting just 4 of 15 attempts in total. But like you mentioned, this weekend is really that third and last chance for Maryland to put it all together. That final tune-up game before they turn their attention to Big Ten play. But Maryland at first will welcome Towson this weekend, chance to go 3-0 all time. It'll be the second meeting against head coach Pete Shinnick. Maryland will have a chance to extend its non-conference win streak to 18 games. Not only will it be the longest in the country, it'll be a chance to tie Alabama's record, which was set a couple of years back, with 18 consecutive non-conference wins. That would be tied for the fourth longest streak among Power Four teams. A little bit about Towson, year 3 for Pete Shinnick, as mentioned, 14-11 all time. Opened the season with road wins against Norfolk State, Morgan State. Prior to Towson, he won the D2 title down at West Florida back in 2019. A little bit of familiarity for Maryland. Towson will be led by freshman quarterback Andrew Indorf, who's actually a former teammate of current freshman linebacker Travaris Daniels back at St. Thomas Aquinas. So a little bit of, I guess, defensive familiarity to lean on for this defense. Will be interesting to see if Daniels gets a chance to make his first play in a Maryland uniform with Indorf and a familiar face lined up opposite of him. Indorf, through his first 2 games, both of his starts through just under 190 yards. But the defense, they enter this weekend ranked second in the conference in scoring defense, allowing just under 15 points per game, and have got 4 takeaways through these first 2 weeks. So think that this Maryland offense, it'll be a little bit interesting to see how they adjust, what Towson's kind of able to ring or throw at Maryland. That'll be a wrinkle to the offense. But Ben, what's one thing you're looking to see on Friday night?
I'm looking to see continued success for this secondary, which has been really good with some of the additions they made. Jamari Glasker, who's been one of those key guys that they picked up out of the portal. If you think about how bad this team was in the secondary last year, it was ultimately the demise of this team. They had 4 games in Big Ten play where they gave up over 300 yards of passing, and of course you're going to lose the majority of those games. They ended up winning the one game against USC by a miracle block field goal. We all know what happened on that night, but
Yep.
ultimately they were really bad in passing situations last year, really struggled in the secondary, and they've been a lot better. They've really done a nice job at contesting the football. They've been pretty sure tacklers as well, and I think what Jalen Husky has done as a safety, kind of the leader of this defense outside of maybe Daniel Wingate, has been really nice to see. And I know they haven't really been challenged vertically yet by anyone, So, I mean, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for me is they just continue to build confidence right now because, yeah, they're not really facing the same level of competition you will see in terms of wide receivers who are going to challenge you vertically down the field in the Big Ten, quarterbacks that are going to be able to challenge you because, as it stands right now, Northern Illinois and FAU, they haven't really had a quarterback that's been able
Yeah.
to throw the ball down the field for that realm. In Northern Illinois, it was very obvious that they had no interest in trying to throw the ball anywhere past the sticks, and it's kind of just been that way for Maryland. And they picked the ball off 6 times, obviously against FAU, so they tried to throw on them, and it was really not a good look whatsoever. But if they continue to build confidence, I think I can really start to see them gel a little bit more, and I can have some belief that they're going to hold up and live up to what they've done so far when they get into Big Ten play. So just continued success for those guys in the secondary.
Yeah, I think that those are definitely some good points. For me, I'm sticking kind of with what was a sore spot for Maryland in week one. I think it's going to be building confidence in the run game because, again, like you said, I think just going into Towson versus Wisconsin the week after, the level of competition is not great. But Maryland, I think being able to at least create the big plays on the ground, I think is kind of a big thing for Maryland. Through 2 weeks, 5 rushes over 10 yards. One of a handful of Power Four teams that has yet to break off a 20-yard rush or more or longer, excuse me. And I think that those that's an area of concern for Maryland. Going into this
Hmm.
season, Nolan Ray, he broke off a 48-yard touchdown a year ago against UConn in the season opener. He's kind of always been viewed as a guy that when he gets out in the open field, he has that ability to make his man miss and take it the distance. Has that big play ability, has the speed and the vision to be able to do that. Dewan Williams has a little bit more power to him, but also has that home run speed. But both those guys, I think you've kind of seen glimpses, and I think for this running back room to really take that next step, I think that this is kind of a key week for them to kind of be able to start to put it all together. And again, it's not just on the running backs. I think this is also on the offensive line. I think when I mentioned what stuck out in week two in the week two win versus Northern Illinois, that drive that went out started with 5 consecutive runs. It started out with Octavian Smith on an end around. So Maryland has some other ways that you can kind of ignite the ground game a little bit, but kind of creating that consistency with the offensive line in the trenches. I think that's kind of an area where I think Maryland can really kind of take control this weekend. Like you said, I think this secondary, the eye test so far, I think they've passed. Obviously week one with the 6 interceptions there, that's a huge testament to them. And then week two, I think kind of being able to build on that, holding NIU under 100 passing yards. I don't know that I'm as concerned about run defense from last week. I think that there was just the volume of NIU. I think Maryland's defense has a chance to continue to build its momentum. So I think this offense and the rushing attack, until they can do it, it's going to be how Big Ten defenses they're gonna stack the box to try and limit Maryland's offense. So until Maryland is able to kind of show off that balance, it could be a struggling Big Ten conference season.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. This is really the last opportunity to establish whatever they want to do here, whether it's offensively, defensively, because the big boys are coming out to play, and you're going up to Madison. That's a tough place to play, regardless of who's going to be at quarterback for Wisconsin in that game or how good they are compared to years past. That's a tough place to play, and it's going to be Maryland's first true test, really.
Yep, absolutely. And like you said, we'll see how it shakes out this weekend. And before we dive into our score prediction and our catalyst to the game, a reminder that we are sponsored by Catalyst Hot Dogs. The catalyst to the game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry aged black Angus all beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offer vegan dogs as gluten-free buns because Catalyst has food for everyone. Make sure to find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. Now, time for our score predictions. Ben, what you got for this weekend?
I got Maryland winning this one 31-6, improving to 3-0, 18 conference wins in a row. So big stuff for Maryland there. You head into conference play feeling confident before you go to Madison. The catalyst to the game is, I think, is you continue to see this defensive line put pressure on the quarterbacks. You got a freshman in Andrew Indorf that's leading the way for this Towson team. So ultimately, you'd hope to see your defensive line getting some good pressure, put them in some uncomfortable passing situations, because that's what we've seen from Maryland. When they have forced third and long situations through the first 2 weeks, they've been very good. With the improved secondary, it's been tough for a lot of these quarterbacks to really try to challenge them down the field, and I don't expect that to be any different this weekend against Towson. So as long as they're able to put some adequate pressure on them, I think they'll be just fine. It's going to be tough for Towson to score the football.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm going not too far off score wise. I'm going 34-3. And I would say the catalyst of the game is efficiency. We touched on it earlier in the episode. Cutting down on the penalties from week one into week two. And I would say this week the penalties that continuing that trend, I think is a positive step in the right direction for Maryland. But I would say, looking at last week as well, with the receiving core, coming off with 5 drops, whether it was the first drive, Dwan Williams on the third down throw late in the fourth quarter, Dorian Fleming and Octavian Smith crossing routes. And, there's a small miscommunication, tweaks that you maybe sometimes have to go through in order to learn from them. But, like we said, I think that this is a chance for Maryland to really play a clean game. Malik Washington, I'd say his real lone blemish so far was the red zone fumble last week. Obviously, an unfortunate error, just putting the ball on the ground there. Mike Loxley, he talked about it post game, just extending the play. Malik Washington, he mentioned post game or Tuesday as well. The smarter play is just, chuck it, save the possession, save the drive. So I think that those are kind of the small things that maybe Maryland needs to kind of build on. And like you said, I think this is a chance for Maryland to continue to grow that confidence. This is the third straight game in the shell, and I think doing that at home, that definitely helps Maryland to be able to ease their way into the season. But going into a hostile environment next week, where that margin of error is significantly reduced compared to the first 3 games. Maryland will need to figure out a way to continue winning the turnover battles and not shooting themselves in the foot. So will definitely be interesting. That'll do it for the latest episode of the Show Report. Maryland takes on Towson this Saturday at noon in CQ Stadium to wrap up non-conference play. Make sure you stay locked in over on InsideTheBlackandGold.net for all your latest news and your go-to stop for pregame and postgame coverage through the college football season. This is Ahmed Kabir and Ben Strober signing off.